Hey.
Welcome to Startup Grind. We appreciate you guys being out here. This is kind of an unusual one. 2 interviews at the same time. Don't tell national because they will get on us for doing that. But this is a special opportunity.
It's one company.
Yeah, it's one company. So it's a special opportunity to feature 2 founders that are globally minded, which we're also celebrating out here the Global Entrepreneurship Week. And so this is an official host, I'm an official coordinator, and it's something that College of Architecture has done before, and that we used to do at Startup Aggieland as well. So we're very pleased to have with us as well in that same light, Mike Bray from London, England, who came in from Austin today. He got so bored in Austin, he decided to come join us a little bit.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
Sleepy town.
So Mike is with RC Components, Electro Components, I don't know what else, Design Spark?
Design Spark.
Yeah, Design Spark. His official title is Vice President Innovation R&D at Design Spark. So look him up, find him on LinkedIn,
And stay tuned for an announcement tomorrow.
And stay tuned for some pretty cool news coming out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
He's not randomly here, in other words.
Yeah, he's not randomly here.
Yeah.
And if you guys are easy on our guests, we've got some Design Spark laptop decals that we could probably share.
Shipped in special.
So anyway, back to Startup Grind. This has been around since 2014. We've got a few new folks, so I'm going to just share that. We were started by students originally, then spun out in 2018 as a community chapter. We've actually one of the largest chapters, one of the oldest chapters in the organization. There's 650 chapters worldwide. There's any city that you go to, there's a Startup Grind if it's a city of some size. So that's why we did it. So anyway, one of the things that I was very impressed with by the Shirk twins is that they worked on their startup, which is a social hotel or microtel, all throughout COVID. And they had reached out to me when I was still at Startup Aggieland, which I'm not there now, but they started talking to me about it then, asked to meet with some people that were in funding in that space. I may have connected them with Spencer, I don't remember, but I connected them with a company called TechMac Development, also Aggie owned. And then they went about their business and I forgot about them. And then lo and behold, I see that they are starting to make social posts about it. Joshua Kim, who was in a class that I taught, was appearing in social posts with them, and so I got interested again. And they were doing all of this during the global pandemic when it was locked down. I don't want to steal their thunder, but I do want to say how impressed I was by this.
Thank you.
And everybody knows Spencer Clements. If you don't, please be sure to meet him. Spencer's CEO of William Cole Company, which is a developer of resort hotels and planned communities, master planned communities. So it's kind of an interesting pairing. But anyway,
I'm here to learn.
That's so rich. Yes, same.
Let's give a big round of applause.
Thanks, Shelley. Appreciate it. So, Blake and Brandon, thank you. Appreciate you joining us and coming in from Dallas. And appreciate the group showing up today. So, this is casual fun. We just kind of talk a little bit about who you guys are, what makes you tick, why you're here. It's really about startups. We'll talk a little bit about hospitality because we're not going to be able to help it, but really kind of talk more about startups. So let's start with, why don't you give them your elevator pitch, who you guys are, what your business is right now, how's it going?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll let Brandon
Introduce
kind
yourself,
of, yeah, Blake Shirk, as it was said.
Brandon Shirk.
We are identical twins, class of 2016, Giga Maggies. But yeah, I'll let Brandon kind of give the overview pitch on like what SOVA is, the story that kind of shaped what it is today, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. So I first want to like take a step back and just tell you guys how cool this is. Like the atmosphere you guys have here is really special. And I think it's a phenomenal like opportunity for you guys to like collaborate and create your ideas. Cause that's really what like a startup is. Like it's an idea. And usually it's like the accumulation of all of like your previous ideas. And for us, that began with our travels. We went to like all these different countries around the world and like saw so many different like phenomenal lodging options, particularly like on the social side. For us, that looked like you arrived, you checked in, and you'd get integrated with the community. And we looked at, the ecosystem of what existed, and we didn't see it. So we were like, this seems like an easy opportunity to slide in and like hopefully provide something like really special for people. And also pairing that with affordability. So that we had these like several different like marks or points that like we wanted to synthesize, that we wanted to like deliver to people in hopefully like a really unique way. So what that looks like for us is SOVA, which is basically, in summary, a micro room hotel. So the rooms are very, very small, and that enables us to provide luxury like in a smaller space. And then we have a full bar, which is fun, and people people check in there, which we think is a good time. We just want to be very, very involved like with our guests and their stay. I don't know if you have anything to add to
we're
that,
like at the end of the day, like people don't really care how big the room is if their goal is to go out and explore the city. It's like when the lights are off, it's like you can't tell. So we just focused on a super clean room, a super comfortable room. We actually tried to rip off like the Ritz-Carlton mattress. We found the exact one they used, and we sent it to the facility. And we're like, can you replicate this? And then we found like eucalyptus sheets, all within like the package of like an international story. So to double back, like we've always just been fascinated with, the world. So it definitely ties into, the globe, and even back to like Rodney Hill's class. Like I took Architecture 458, which is focused on like global business. And it was so cool to see people like come in and, tell their stories about what it was like around the world and different cultures. I was definitely fascinated by that. And that was before, we had done like most of our traveling, because we did most of that during our respective study abroads. It was don't worry, different times. So, not that much of twins, but so different semesters. So we do occasionally do our own thing. So it was really fun while we were abroad. Like it was so cool. Travel was reasonable once you got there. Like you're hosteling, you're backpacking, and we're like, how do we replicate that same like design, and just where you have an atmosphere where you show up and suddenly everyone's friends. Like a lot of my travel was solo travel, and I just love the idea of being comfortable with that, knowing that I'm instantly going to make friends when I show up to like a hostel lobby. And I'm like, just sit down with someone like, hey, where are you from? What are you doing here? And then like suddenly we're out in the town, and we're exploring or something like that, which was really cool. So
and like for me, like so many like good products and services are almost like addicting. Like you like crave them. Like, man, that was cool. Even if you only have like a short downtime, you're like, I want to do that again. Like I want to experience that again.
Exactly.
And like that's what we encountered on our travels, was this like experience where I'd get back, and then like a week later I'm like, man, I want to go back, and I want to experience that, and I want to live that again.
I noticed that phenomenon in particular. Like I stayed at this one hostel in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and if you were staying between Thursday through Sunday, you had to stay multiple nights because they just had so much demand. And I was like, this place isn't like clean, like it's not great, like at all, but like they had pricing power because it was so social. So it's like $30, which for a hostel in Argentina like felt like a ton of money per night. But like they could just be like, hey, you have to stay the whole weekend or else you're not staying at all, because there was so much demand to stay there. So we're like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, let's see if we can bring that back. But then like we definitely wanted to pivot away from hostels, which is why conversations are so important. I know it's easy if you have like an idea to be like too tight knit about it. Well, like newsflash, startups are like super hard. Like not everyone's out to like grab your idea, because it usually takes thousands of hours and like years of work. So you kind of have to share it, and you have to iterate until you get to, an idea that works. Because originally we actually did just want to start like a cool hostel in the States. And then we're like, wait, maybe that's like not going to work because people in the States don't really like shared spaces. So we just tried to like elevate that experience. And we are for sure a hotel. It's all private rooms, private baths, but it's fun and it's like luxurious. It's nice. Like people show up and they're like, hey, yeah, like this is sleek. Like this is, well designed. It's clean. So I've had a number of guests, because we've been open about 3 weeks or so, that show up and they're like, hey, this is like a hostel for adults, or for like grown-ups, or just it's like in a luxurious setting, a hotel, but you have that like culture, which is the whole thing that we wanted to create.
And you're in Deep Ellum, right?
So just outside Deep Ellum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're downtown. If you're familiar with the Dallas area, we're between like the Statler and Deep Ellum. So we're definitely right on the foot of Deep Elm, which is where we want it to be. But we're also downtown, which I think helps with our online positioning because people that are visiting know what downtown is. And like hotel rates are, you know, significantly higher downtown versus if you go like 10, 15 minutes, you know, in any direction. So we wanted to be downtown, but just within walking distance of Deep Elm, which is kind of the nightlife and live music, fun part of Dallas.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Let's back up just real quick.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
I was about to go on another rant, so that's probably for the best.
So now, where'd you guys grow up?
Yeah, so we grew up in Dallas.
In Dallas. Okay, so that's logical to plant your first business in a place that you know possibly.
So actually the inverse. So
Yeah.
like we had originally written off Dallas, and I think it's because we grew up in the city and we're like, this is not like
This is boring.
No, maybe a little bit. Just being from there, we're like, this is a business destination. Like people aren't coming here like for fun.
Sure.
And then we stumbled into this tourism deck. It was like 700 pages produced by some like Texas Institute or something. And in it, they were like, Dallas is actually 70% leisure. And we're like, wait a second. We're like, Dallas is 70% leisure? And this goes back to something that's just a good note is who like are your competitors? I think that's really important. Like who are your competitors and your competitors? Because for us, like we have, you know, there's the national level, like who's doing something similar to your brand. And then there's also the local level, like who in downtown Dallas is trying to do like what we're doing. And we saw downtown Dallas and we're like, I don't see anything like that's affordable, that's fun.
That looks like this.
Yeah, it looks like this, that's cool, that's unique, especially of the boutique variety. So like local competition, non-existent, national competition has seedlings arriving, but nothing, you know, significant at this point.
Which also helps with just press and getting the word out. Like we actually did not try or contact anyone at the Dallas Morning News to get multiple articles. Like they just found our plans and just put out the story without even talking to us. And we're like, okay, I mean, we'll take it. But like that definitely would not have happened in like, you know, an LA publication or a New York publication. Like the major news outlet wouldn't have been like, hey, check this out.
But like a funny learning lesson, like I want to just share with you guys everything. Because I think, you know, like, you know, like mindset is important. It's like you're going to come up with like hurdles and you're going to have to learn how to solve problems very, very fast. So this is a comical story, but when our first article came out by Dallas Morning News, again, like Blake said, we didn't know they were going to publish it. They didn't reach out to us. And then like morning of, like I get texts from my friends that are like, oh, have you seen the article? I'm like, what article? You know, I like look at my phone. I'm like looking it up and I'm like, okay, now like our website has to be patched, you know, because there was something, you know, that needed to be adjusted and stuff. And that's just like part of it. It's like problem solving. Like, can you problem solve? Can
Every
you?
day.
Literally, yeah, it's every day. So
yeah, well, good. So, so I'm going to take it back a little bit. So you grew up in Dallas. You come to A&M. What did you want to be when you came to A&M?
So I had actually always been super fascinated by hotels. So back in middle school, we used to design them on a free software. So just loved the idea of travel, but had forgotten that passion. So came into A&M with just a drive after finance. So I think I read like reminiscences of a stock operator my senior year in high school. So I rolled into college like, let's go finance. So then all throughout, so my involvement and when I was at A&M was mostly like Aggie Investment Club, you know, Titans like business school, like stuff. And that was kind of like it. I do stock pitch competitions. So I was just, all my internships were finance internships, at least later when you do actually get those types of internships. So we were both in that track. But we had kind of always had, you know, an entrepreneurial spirit where we wanted to do something, but it was a matter of timing. I think ultimately it was Brandon was on his study abroad or something like that, and I had just gotten back from mine, and I was going through like interviews for equity research, like, you know, out in like an investment bank or something like that, which is I loved because it dealt with public equities, which I thought was fascinating. But I remember I called Brandon. I was like, well, we kind of want to do something, let's just do it now, because no matter what, we're not really going to be like completely ready for it. Like if I do that, if I do that job in like, you know, equity research, I'm still not going to be prepared to like start like a hotel brand, which is the goal, or like start something like that. Like it's still going to be different. Maybe I'd be wiser or better at interacting with people, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to have to take a plunge. And right now, I live very economically, so I was telling Brandon, I was like, hey, you want to just like go for it? And then I remember on the phone, he was like, yeah, why not? It was like the most casual thing. And then
I hope you were going to say no. Right?
Yeah. And I was like, all right, we're in. So then I just like canceled like all like the
So
interviews.
you're in school at this time? You're still at A&M?
Still at
That was
A&M.
when like the
like
idea first originated.
2015, 16?
So yes, that was fall of 2016.
Yeah.
So I graduated December of 2016.
So you overnight deal. You go from, it only took you 5 years to get the hotel open.
Yeah.
Yeah, overnight, right?
Yeah, so it always happens fast, right?
Yeah,
So when
always.
you made that commitment, we were here last night listening to a gentleman talking about the process of startup, right? The process of what does it take to start a company? And I think you guys correct me, his premise was it takes people, right? 2 or more people, sometimes 3, but definitely more than 1. But usually 2 or 3 people. It takes, in his world, it takes technology, having some technology. And he also said you have to have a problem you're solving, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have this big problem that you're solving. But if you have just 2 of those things, you don't need money. You've got a startup, right? So you guys had each other in that commitment, but then what, were you chasing a passion, or did you think you had a problem you were solving?
I think both, actually. Like, we got very, very lucky, and because we were already passionate about it, and then the fact that the opportunity did present itself, which thankfully it did, just made it easier. And now I would recommend that to everybody. Like, if you have both, like, you're much more likely to be successful, because then you're gonna pull in like crazy hours. Like, you know, we've definitely pulled plenty of all-nighters and stuff like that, and I think that's easier if you're already like hyper passionate about it. So we saw an opportunity, so we had like, you know, we saw potential, and then passion kind of kept us going in the down times.
Did you build a team around this, or did you try to attract capital immediately, or what was your first step in like securing a? I remember we did our first development deal. We had to go have land. We were golf course developers, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to tell people you want to raise money for a golf course if you don't control the property.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So were you guys trying to source
familiar.
property and control property first, or what was your strategy?
Exactly. And there's so many chicken and egg scenarios like in business, at least in like ours, I'm sure in like everyone's business. But like we're like, you kind of need multiple things to happen at the same time a lot of times, where it's like, how do you like coordinate these things? Because yes, of course you need like capital, especially for like a high, you know, cost of capital business like ours. But then again, at that point we were, you know, 23-ish year old like people who had like never worked at a hotel, like never like had like a successful like business, never really done anything noteworthy besides graduate college, which is noteworthy, but like, you know, maybe not noteworthy enough to like for somebody to give you like a bunch of money. So it did actually just start with conversations, which I come back to a million times. Like we chat with like a ton of like hotel people. We chat with all of our friends to just like fine tune.
We wrote like a 2-page executive summary and just like sent it to like a bunch of friends and stuff like that.
But that as like initial steps.
Yeah.
So it's like to get the feedback, like iterate the idea, make sure we're learning about stuff, and like contact literally like everybody that we know. And in the course of those conversations, you end up having people that like believe in you, and they're like, okay, if you get to this step, like come back to me for capital. So we had enough conversations to where we were able to like, one, learn, and eventually create like a ridiculously robust business plan. It was like 100 pages or something like that. It was like way overkill just to show like preparation. And then, you know, we're looking for sites at the same time. We're working side jobs. I worked at a hotel. Brandon was a sushi chef. We drove Uber. We did like consulting. So we're just doing like a bunch of random side jobs while having like conversations, looking for a place, like building the financial model so we could pitch that, and just creating like preparedness that we could demonstrate to others in order to like collect that capital. And
that was like a big thing for us, is just preparation, especially as like young guys. You can't just go into a room and be like, I'm building a hotel. They're like, let me see, like,
good luck.
Yeah, literally, they'd be like out the door with you, you know. So that's why we built our business plan. Was way overkill. Like most people don't have to build a 100-page business plan, but like we wanted to go in and be like, boom, like drop it on, like here's like our preparation, like we put a lot of thought into this, like, you know, from every angle and stuff, the financial model. And thankfully people asked for that stuff eventually, so it's like, sure, here it is, here's the materials, sort of thing. But yeah, like Blake was saying, tons and tons of chicken and egg scenarios.
Yeah. So we leased the building because we did not have the capital on the front end, but it's still like you're taking that risk. So you're just hoping that you've had enough positive conversations that once you, like, in our case, lease the building or make, like, I don't know, the financial commitment, so to speak, to like continue the journey, that you're going to be able to get it
Take
done.
the next step, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
So, did you ever,
Yeah.
so this was over a several years period, is what it sounds like, or was it over just a few months period?
So the whole journey was actually 4 years. So we
Okay.
created the idea in like fall of 2017, and then hence opened a couple
Yeah.
months ago. But I would say just those first steps we're describing, where we're creating the business plan, chatting with people, that was like 6 or so months.
Yeah, that's
Like,
fast, right?
Yeah.
To go from no experience in the hospitality business, young people
Yeah.
travel with passion, to raising
Yeah.
money. So, I mean, I don't know how much you can share, but how did you actually raise this capital? What form of capital
Exactly.
did you take
Yeah.
on?
And just to also like clarify, the 6 months was just for like the business plan, the learning, definitely not the capital. That's part of the story that is to come. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah, so obviously there's two components of our capital. There's the equity, right, which is the ownership, and then there's debt, which is our bank loan. But we had a lot of complications, for instance, with the bank loan. Since we didn't own the property, we just owned the developments. That's like your security for it. So it's a little different and like more difficult to find a bank. And then for equity, we wanted to be a little bit more unique in terms of a startup. So we went with a more classical real estate approach. So investors get a waterfall of cash flow returns.
Yeah, so it's like essentially like a preferred return on the specific like asset, just like annual distributions, and then they have an incentive interest in the brand of like SOVA as well. So it's like kind of that's like their like startup-y investment, and then they have their like real estate, but it's kind of more real estate / operational component as well, where like the majority of their ownership is, and where we sweeten the deal over a typical like hotel transaction in order to raise that capital, because it's like, oh, why can't I just go invest in this well-established hotel under the Marriott brand with a massive network and get this return? Okay, well then I guess we're gonna have to create like a really solid like return projection like in our base case, which kind of leaves us like more minimally like involved like on this specific project in terms of like sharing in the cash flow, but also
our goal was to like retain as much ownership of the brand as we could, because we believe in it, and I hope you guys believe in the ideas that you have. So we believe in the long-term potential of what will hopefully become a brand. So it's our goal to to hopefully maintain that.
So these guys, does your investors get to follow you into your next deal?
Yeah.
Or they have rights to invest in the next property, but
Well,
you own the brand though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So not like legally, they don't have actually participation rights, but it's but they are involved through their like incentive equity pool where they already own like some share of the brand. So in effect, yes, but we were also slightly concerned about that because we're like, what if you have an institutional player that just wants to come in just them, or just with like a small handful of institutional players, and you don't have 30 different individuals that you're having to like deal with because we have 30 investors. So we were a little like tentative about like legally including like that provision, but we're definitely also keen on letting like the investors in this project participate going forward, like if we can. But we were just a little reticent about
finding that balance.
making
right?
that like
Yeah, so how many keys in the hotel?
39.
39 keys, no restaurant, right?
Correct.
No food and beverage, so you don't have that
Well,
big overhead. You have beverage,
Yes.
no food.
Yeah.
So you have a bar.
Yeah.
39 keys, micro rooms. You're leasing the building. So hopefully a pretty long-term lease there to recover your capital, right?
Yes.
And then you had some significant renovation expense to the building you had to go through. Had to hire architects, do all this stuff. So these are things that you had never done before.
Nope.
So every day is a learning curve, right?
Yes.
So why don't you talk to us a little bit about like your biggest learning curve through this? What did you I mean, you're still probably, I mean, we're still
Yeah.
getting our hat handed to us on a daily basis, right,
Yeah.
in the hotel business. So
Yeah.
tell us about maybe your biggest learning curve in just pulling that deal together with architects and operations and permits and things like that.
That's so tough to answer because I'm trying to, like, it's all learning curve to me, and I have difficulty finding like a
Well,
specific
Did you
biggest.
hire a hospitality architect?
So
Had it done
in a
hotels?
sense, they had done,
They've done-
restaurants and one hotel. I would say our secret is one, like having like a beginner's mind,
Yeah, that's
where
what I
we're
was
like
gonna say.
okay with
Yes.
accepting the fact that we don't know everything, and two, like hiring the right people that are honest, because people unfortunately do take advantage of other people. So it's like
we
want
do
to,
have
like,
stories where that has happened.
Yeah,
So
thankfully, like
yeah.
on micro scales, but we wanted to like work with groups that were super honest and knew what they were doing, and I think that we were also driven to work with younger groups because they were more driven to work with us. Well, not necessarily younger from like an age standpoint, but like more new in the sense that they were very, very driven to go like above and beyond.
Well, they can make you
And-
successful and make a name for themselves.
Exactly.
right?
Yes. So and
Or help make you successful.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. So we, worked with a specific like GC who's just super honest, super like open book. Like they're not out to like change order you to death, which is like, yeah, it's like a practice sometimes where GCs will like do a lot of change orders and they take fees on that, but they don't do that. So it's like little
Yeah.
things like that where we can go into our meetings with them on a weekly basis, our like owner architect contractor meetings, and we can be like, hey, what's the scoop? Like, what should we be doing? Like, how should we be helping? What is this and that? Huge debrief, like on a weekly basis, where we're learning the process.
I think this is super
And-
cool. The reason, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. The reason this is super cool is last night Neil was talking about how it takes 5 years to become an expert in something, right? He said, I can become an expert in anything in 5 years. If I can get a PhD in it, that means I can be an expert in it, right? And all it takes is starting.
Yeah.
All it takes is starting and doing it. So your first OAC meeting, right,
Yeah.
is like, what the heck is an
Yeah.
OAC meeting? Well, that's
Yeah.
owner,
Yep.
architect, contractor. Oh,
Exactly.
okay, I'm the owner. There's
Yeah.
an architect, and there's a
Yeah.
contractor. Let's have a meeting, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you learn how to do it. And I can give
Exactly.
you example after example of people in this room who didn't have backgrounds in project management, construction, design, all these things, who are just knocking it out of the park, doing it today because you just
Yes.
start doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And so y'all are learning finance, you're learning architecture, you're learning design, you're learning branding. Did you work with a branding company, or did you kind of develop your own brand? And I'm going to get back to the what problem
Yeah.
you're solving question here
it.
in a minute.
I'm ready for
Let's
it.
talk about
Yeah.
branding real quick, and we'll go back to that.
So we did work with a group in terms of developing like our logo,
Yeah.
but the name was from us, and hopefully what it stood for was from us, and that was really important, and that drove the direction of everything else. Like,
And what does it
what
stand
does
for?
SOVA represent?
Yes.
So exactly. To me, it represents a place for people. I'm just trying to like break it down as defined as I can. A place where people feel welcome, and I struggle to find a place like that exists.
which also
and-
ties into like the problem question
yeah,
a little
right.
bit.
exactly.
Right.
So hopefully that is SOVA. It's like you see the brand and you're like, oh, that is a place that can be a gateway for me to explore a city.
It's a trailhead.
Yeah, it's a trailhead. Exactly. That's a perfect way to describe it. And that represents adventure could be like a word that you would think of, or like friendliness, meeting people, experience. These are all adjectives that I would use to describe SOVA. And
Which, by the way, means sleep in Swedish.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not Spanish as far as I know.
Yeah. So we wanted it to be 2 syllables.
It also apparently means owl in Russian, which I discovered since we had a couple
You
of
figured these
Russian
things
guests.
out.
Yeah. So just a place where people feel
They feel good.
They feel good, and I don't know if that exists
Nah,
in at least in like a large scale like brand. And I take that seriously. Like we're working there. We've been open 2-3 weeks, and we're there basically around the clock now.
Sure,
And
yeah.
everybody who walks in, like once they leave and go explore, like one of the first things they do when they come back is come talk with me.
Right.
And like I'm not like always like, oh, come talk with me. They're just like, oh, I just went and I saw this, like this. you know, like you should put this down, like is it like a thing, and like
something else to do.
Yeah, and like we just have this interaction that I think hopefully is special for people. So.
Yeah. So I feel like, yeah, that ties into the problem as well. But I also think the problem is like when you're at like economy pricing, I wouldn't classify ourselves as like an economy hotel, but we're like the lowest price downtown, like for sure. So it's like once you start to get down to the lower like price, like the reviews like reflect that. Like I've checked obviously like every hotel in downtown Dallas, like they're like, you know, the reviews, like I read them, I look at the ratings, and like 95% of the time, the best rated ones are the most expensive ones. So it's like the, you know, like the Ritz-Carlton and like the Four Seasons and the Jewel and like places like the Adolphus, like places in Dallas that are like really like luxurious. While once you start going down, like you start to see worse reviews, like lower quality. But we wanted to like be unique in the sense that like we're a well-rated place that people want to stay at. That there is brand loyalty to. Where usually in the lower place, like, do you care the difference between like one of those places versus another? I won't list any names, but do you like do you really care? Like, probably not. Like, you're just at that point looking for anywhere. But we wanted like brand loyalty, which does not exist, which is like a problem in that within that category. Like even to some extent to like the mid-scale or you know and below. But that's like a big problem. So as like a quick bragging note, we're actually currently the highest rated hotel downtown on, again, we haven't been open long, but after like 50 reviews in downtown just across the board. So it's like,
hey, congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're like trying to like drive reviews, and we do that like through like, I think our social community where people I think give us a little bit more like slack on like other things that are currently like,
and we're not perfect on design. We're not perfect on a lot of elements, but I think that community is rare. Like I was there last night. We had, you know, 4 different groups that didn't know each other that ended up walking to Deep Elm together. And I just don't, you know, so I think that's like a special, hopefully a special thing. So
are you you looking for like an upgraded hostel, like somebody looking at a hostel might then upgrade to SOVA? Is that one demographic? And but you sound like you're getting groups too, not just solo travelers, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say that answers it to some extent, or just people that are interested in uniqueness, like boutique experiences. I saw, that Airbnb, we figured we might chat about that later, but also that could be a good segue into it now. I think we also like appeal to the Airbnb market, and we see that through our Airbnb bookings because we are on there as like a boutique hotel, which you can't do as, you know, kind of a flagged property or a larger hotel. We're on there and we see a lot of bookings through there, like significant bookings through Airbnb, because I think we connect with that style of traveler. So it's not necessarily just like we get all ages, we get all demographics, we get, you know, everybody that just wants to like explore the city, and we get people that are like, you know, wealthy, we get people that aren't wealthy. Like
you'll think this is interesting. About 25% of our bookings are actually international at this point, which I enjoy because I think that feeds into like our culture.
Right.
Like you're in the lobby and all of a sudden you hear like German, you hear like, you know, French, you hear these other languages, and you're like, oh, this is a place for adventurous people. This is a place for explorers. So
you're hitting that so is your demographic younger, you think, than is it a you know, like not to say your age group, but I have a son that's younger or about your age, right? So that younger demographic who's used to traveling, want to be on the hostels, all that stuff, they're looking for that social place, right? And not just a transaction like we talked about outside, where it's just a transaction, give me the room, give me the key, I'm out of here. I guess my question for that is as that group ages, is SOVA still going to be relevant to them, or will they move on to a more mature place to stay, and then you'll backfill that with the young travelers again?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the
You're
answer
3
is,
weeks in. You don't know.
think the answer is partially we'll see.
Yeah.
But I think that like we are not only like the younger like traveler. Like I think that like spirit, which is why we almost just say the modern traveler more than, you know, the young traveler, because we do legitimately like get like all ages. We welcome all ages, because I think that spirit extends like beyond like just like an age.
They just want to go discover.
So it's like they want to discover.
Yeah.
So it's like, for example, on the Stones concert last week, like we were fully booked, and it was like a great time last Tuesday. And there was people from everywhere. It was like, people that just started listening to them, and then people that were listening to them in like the 60s and 70s. Like we had like everybody, and everybody was in the bar. Everybody was like getting along and hanging out. But I wouldn't say that like, oh yeah. Anyways.
No, yeah, you're good. I was going to say something interesting about what you were saying though is I don't know if people are really looking for us. I think they like find us.
Right.
I like to think that maybe there's some people out there that
It's
are
a
like,
pleasant surprise.
it is, yeah. I don't think people are like, oh, I'm maybe looking for a like social hotel. I think maybe they go to Airbnb or they go to Expedia and they're like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Like this has like a social, they put value on this component that other people aren't putting value on.
Sure.
And maybe deep down they desired it, but so that's what I would say.
So one of the issues with businesses that want to scale is how do you scale, right?
Yeah.
And how do you put in place processes that are going to allow you to scale? And one of the fears of investors is that the founders are great at this location, but then what happens when you go to the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10? Because Brandon can't be there talking to the people that just walk back in the door. So
Yeah.
y'all are probably too early in your evolution to really worry about that, or have you already thought about that?
I definitely think
great
about
question,
it
yeah.
fairly consistently. And yeah, I mean, that's currently something that we're working on. And I think that starts with like our staff now. And I can't tell you how many compliments I get on our staff. And you see that even in our reviews, which was a big goal of ours. Like if names appear in reviews, then you're at the top. Like, because the people will only like take the effort to go onto like a review and remember somebody's name and write about their name if they really enjoyed it. And
I
like,
talk about the case study thing.
yeah,
Or-
sure.
Yeah, actually, you can keep going. I'll sub in after.
Yeah, but yeah, and currently like our staff is really good. So we are trying to figure out like how we replicate it, but it's mostly just how we hire. Like we don't have like on our actually ad is really funny. I wish I had it. Particular our overnight ad, our like night auditors like ad is like really funny, which was my goal. It's like
For hiring people.
for
is
hiring
what he
people.
means.
Sorry,
Yeah.
jumping around. And
You're trying to speak their language.
yeah,
yeah.
You put an ad
exactly.
out, right?
So because
Sure,
we're
show the culture.
we don't
Exactly.
have like in our ads that you need 4 years of front desk experience and like 2 years of customer service and like 3 years of this. It's like whatever. Okay, if you like chatting with people, if you like hosting people, I promise you like we could teach you how to like do our processes. Like we picked the easiest property management software. We picked the easiest drinks to make. Like we picked like easy stuff on general. Like we don't even have like beer on like tap, or there's no drafts because we're like, all right, we're just not going to do that because it's an extra step. So it's like we've just minimized everything at the front desk. Like when I worked at, I worked at the Monterey Plaza Hotel. It was like a luxury hotel out in California, super awesome. But it took me like probably like 2 weeks to finish training, and I feel like I'm like pretty capable, but it still like took me kind of that long to learn the processes and everything. Whilst I've literally trained one of our people in like 20 minutes one time, and like he's asked me like 3 or 4 questions since then. So it's like we're just gonna hire the best people, and we're just gonna make our system like easy, which we have.
And so is one of you in charge of operations, or do you have another partner or another person who's like head of operations and focuses on that?
Yeah, just us. But we
Us.
are Brandon and I.
Well, twins. I mean, but
Yeah.
twins is an interesting us,
Yeah.
right? 'Cause you guys think
Yeah.
a lot alike, I'm sure, and know what each other are thinking, right? Growing up together.
But of course, like there's a lot operationally.
There
So that
is.
comes back to we always have to have conversations and partner with people that are great. So we have an advisory board, and then even within our investor pool, there's a lot of like knowledge within there.
Yeah.
And like one of our advisors, he was in like startup Aggieland. Bhavin Patel's his name. He's awesome. Like he's like a hotel guy, and we'll like text him like all the time, and we have calls or meetings on a weekly basis, and be like little things that like you'd probably laugh about, but it's like, oh yeah, we need I don't know, I get it, but like, hey, do you have like an example of like this, because we need it, and be like, yeah, here it is, like edit it to like your uses or whatever. So it's like stuff where like we're finding out like, oh yeah, how would you like do this, how would you handle this, where we're like pinging off of somebody that's super experienced in the space in order to like learn, because we would not be able to do it without them, because there are some things that
Learning as you go, right? Every
Yeah.
day is going to be new right now. 3
Yeah.
weeks
It is.
in, every day is going to be new. Every guest is going to be different, and you're just going
Yeah.
to keep learning. So, very cool. So let's talk about this word for a second. Grind,
Yeah.
right? Was there a part
Yeah.
of this evolution of this process? You're trying to develop a hotel during COVID, which
Mm-hmm.
Shelley mentioned. Very difficult to do, to raise capital and figure this out. You don't know when the pandemic is going to end. Hotels are getting hammered as an asset class, right? So was there a point in time where you were actually physically feeling like you were going through a grind of
Yeah.
your startup?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about that, and then we're going to
Yeah.
open up for questions here.
All right,
So-
cool.
And it doesn't necessarily stop. I feel like it goes through waves when you're like in a startup because there's no one handing you stuff. Like there's no like corporations handing you more work. There's just work that pops up that you have to complete. So it depends on like how much there is. So like just to share schedules because I think that's interesting. So the last 2 or 3 weeks, like we work 9 a.m. to 12, 7 days a week. And that's kind of like our schedule, like on site. And we'll handle like operational stuff, marketing stuff, checking people in. The 2 weeks before that, it was more like, basically probably 140 hours a week, legitimately, for like 2 weeks going into like opening because it was like 20 hours a day. But I think the other like key time was during capital raise because COVID hit and we still had 50% of the capital to raise, and which is why our pitch number for how many people we pitched is so high, 1,600. If you were curious.
You pitched 1,600
Yeah,
people.
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And it's
That's
such
a grind.
Yeah,
it's a
for
grind.
sure.
So there's definitely like moments where of course, literally gotten like, under the weather, including like right after we opened. So it's like because we were just there all the time, like getting everything ready, and then during like capital raise, because we're like, okay, we're like halfway there, like we need to figure this out, and a lot of people.
But there's always like a new well. Like that's what we'd realize. Like we'd reach the end of our rope, we'd turn to each other and we'd be like, well, I guess this is it, sort of thing. And then we'd stumble into like a new source. We'd be like, okay, there's like 100 people that are in this group. Let's like reach out to them. And we'd go through all of them. We're like, I guess that's all we have. And then we'd be like, nope, there's like this other thing. And like, just funniest stuff. Like I was like DMing like people on the Dallas Cowboys. Like, I was like, Des Bryant, please help. Yeah.
We traded a lot of
he did.
messages with Des.
Yeah, but they were always his replies were always suspiciously late at night. I was like, I don't think he actually wants to. It would be like 2 a.m. on like 4th of July, and I was just like, that's probably
You're
not
ghosting
like,
me, Des.
come on, So like the grind is like real. Like you have to like, you just have to keep going, and there is a solution. Like you just have to find it, and it does exist. It absolutely exists. The world is a big place. That's what we'd always remind ourselves. It's like, if I have to go to like Europe or like some other country to like pitch more people, I will. Like,
Right.
whatever. Like we'll find people. There's billions of people out there, and a lot of them are gonna think this is cool. So we just have to keep going and.
It's a great attitude.
Yeah.
So last night, Neil was talking about how startups die, right?
Yeah.
And really, 2 basic ways startups die is you run out of money or you run out of people,
Yeah.
right? If the people both walk away, no more startup, money dries up, that's kind of tough, right? So you have to manage through that. And
That's
and
good,
your,
yeah.
your perseverance is right. I'm just laughing because we've been through that several times. A lot of people in this room have. And,
Yeah.
and we call it manna, right? If you're in the
Yeah.
game, and you're being positive, it's amazing how much good grace and fortune will come your way by being in the game, right? Too many people quit too soon and they're not in the game.
Yep.
But you guys stuck with it. So this is super cool. I want to be cognizant of our time because I know we got some Q&A stuff. Some people want to ask you guys questions. So I'll open it up for questions. And if I don't get any questions, I'll ask some more questions. Steven is.
Did you get the assignment?
From an architectural standpoint, definitely not. We do not have that skill set.
But we did.
We worked with SG Design. They're out of Deep Ellum, a little local group.
But we did build the first iteration on like a free like architect
true.
software like online. It looked so bad though, obviously. Like it was just basically like just like general layout. But thankfully there was an architect who could properly draw it for us.
Exactly. And it's definitely like a team effort
It is,
that we discovered
absolutely.
where it's like they're curious about what design we're trying to go for and what aesthetic, and then we are trying to get them to actually bring that to life. So it's like you're working together, like we're looking up sample images we sent like our plans, like this is like the size of the room we want, about the general layout, and this is like, you know, this is the feel. Here's like, we had like a PDF of like 10, 15 pages of like images where like, these are kind of like the, you know, the atmosphere we want.
The inspiration.
And it's the
right?
inspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, you know, how do we shape that? And then the architect is,
But it was very fun working with the architecture group though, and they brought in a lot of phenomenal insights, and they have the experience, right? So like there was like a little thing where like one of our rooms was up against like an exposed brick wall, and like we had sheetrock in front of that. He was like, "Oh, let's cut this off. Let's like expose more of the sheet." We're like, obviously, it seems like a great idea, but that's not like, that's their, you know, experience weighing in.
And without going on too much of a tangent, the architect is on your team too, because you're hiring them. So they're the one that's keeping the GC in check if you do have a GC that's running off the tracks. So it's like they're like walking the place, they're making sure it's all following the plans correctly. So it's definitely important to have like a great like architect and designer that you could trust, because they're literally like a part of your team. Like they're working directly with you unless you're doing a different contract.
Yeah.
So
Are you going to expand into San Antonio, Austin, Houston?
We would love
Hopefully.
to.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
first things first.
Exactly, yeah,
But
exactly.
I was going back to your question, Jorge, because I remember this moment, or several times, where, yeah, you've been dreaming about this so long, right? And it's all
Yeah.
you, or you and your together, your business partners, whatever. And all of a sudden, there's a day where there's somebody else in the room, and they're really smart,
Yep.
and they're actually helping you, and you're like, wait a second, how did this happen? There's actually somebody here helping me do this.
Yeah.
Right, which is super cool, because then it gives you momentum. And then you can tell the next person, oh, well, my architect is so-and-so. Oh, yeah, I know that guy. Right? Oh, yeah, I must be really legit because I got this really cool architect. And it just builds from there. So you add your team. Questions? Yes, sir.
Kind of piggybacking off your the young people hotel. Do you think that like people crave experiences, like Airbnb experiences, like a new feature? I think people just crave new experiences. So that's kind of how you postured, is like it's not about the bed and stuff like that. It's about the experience of staying there. So is that kind of how you guys postured? And that's what you're kind of going for, is like curating experiences?
Definitely. Yeah. So we actually call our front desk agents or associates, if you will, we call them, including ourselves, travel guides. So it's like you show up and like your travel guide is making you a drink. Your travel guide is pointing you in all the right directions. So we definitely like want that for sure.
Yeah, but it is funny because like a lot of the people that come in, first thing they do is they like look around confused. We're like, hey, over here.
Yeah, check
We're
in.
like, yeah, we're
Drink,
like
want a
this.
beer?
They're like, is this the hotel? And I'm like, yes, come, I'll help you out, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, so I do
And
think.
so-
Go on.
You answered the question he asked you.
Okay, no, I do think people like deeply crave experiences, and I think they always have. I just think the world is now more, well, ignoring COVID, of course, the world is becoming increasingly more available to people. Like flights are getting progressively more cheap. I'm talking large macro scale, like last hundreds of years. You know, we have social medias where you can become friends or keep up with someone from another place around the world. So you're getting inundated with these images and these photos about everything cool that exists out there. And like people want to see that. Like I know I do. Like I get cool stuff that come across my feed and I'm like, I want to go. You know, so like I think more and more as a society, and this is again huge macro trends, like over the next 100 years, are going to want to continue to want that and crave that.
And coming back to like we get, you know, like all like ages, all demographics, all like income levels. Like we did have someone that came to us that usually stays at like pretty, you know, nice hotels downtown. But he was like, yeah, I stay with you guys because I saw the images of like your like opening party. And he was like, it looked really fun. So like that's why I'm staying here. And yeah, probably, you know, low 30s, upper 20s. But he was like, yeah, I saw that, and that's why I booked here. And
that makes you feel great.
Yeah,
it does.
That's exactly, okay, it
does.
worked.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the boomers, I'm like the youngest boomer. I'm old. The boomers were all about stuff, right? So when we were growing up, it's all about collecting stuff. You know, cars, houses, Rolexes, country club memberships, whatever, nice clothes, it's stuff. This generation is all about experiences. It's all about experiences. They don't care as much about the stuff. They want to go experience things. Do we have time for more questions, Shelley? maybe one more. Anybody got a question?
Have you run into any multicultural differences that you have resolved?
Probably not anything that was like prohibitive, but we've definitely, like, as Brandon said, at least through the Booking.com channel, we're 25% international, which has been really fun. So it's like we've been in our bar space where the bar's been composed of like 2 people from Austria, somebody from England, somebody from Canada, and then like
This was at one time.
At
This
one
was
time.
like a one
yeah,
one-time
and then
scenario,
like there's
yeah.
been people from all over. So nothing that's really been like negative in any way, because I feel like generally like the international people are actually even like more in for like our concept. I would say that like knowing Spanish has been very helpful, as I speak Spanish not like fluently but like pretty conversationally, and because we do obviously, like, since the U.S. is so close to like South and Latin or Central.
It's like we had
South
someone
America.
from Colombia
Yeah,
come last night,
exactly.
and these different countries.
Yeah.
But I will say people want to share their culture, which I think is cool. So like this one guy was like traveling, he was from South Africa, and he was traveling with this, bottle of South African brandy. It was called Klipdrift was the name. He's like, oh, you haven't had Klipdrift? So you have to have Klipdrift, like pull, you guy travels with it, and he like pulls it out of the bag, and he's like, I always travel with this, and he like is pouring glasses for people, and he's like, this is.
And TABC walks in.
Yeah, right.
Believe that part of it.
Yeah. No, it's
No, that's great. I
No,
want to share.
but, yeah.
I am going to let Mike ask a question before we.
Yeah.
Just,
Speaking of international,
Yeah.
what's the biggest adaptation or change you've had to make to your original vision as you've gone through this?
great question.
Good question.
I would say that we probably like spent more than we expected, because that was probably not part of like the original plan. So I remember that we'd actually like scaled up like our like ADR, our average daily rate, like projections by like a decent margin from when we just started. Like I remember originally we're like, oh, we'll be like $70 ADR, which is like really low, by the way.
As a backstory, ADR in the hotel space is average daily rate. So that's your price averaged throughout X
not
time
including
span.
like occupancy, which is
Yeah.
like RevPAR, and that ended out like much higher. But I think that, I mean, obviously that was like intentional, because we made like the place nicer to like hit like a different market, but with those same like experiences. So that was probably like the most significant change. Is like, okay, now we're like targeting like a 120 ADR, so it's like it's much higher, still lower than the average.
And that
downtown,
means
but-
it could be $80 one night, 150
160
the weekend. So
Yeah, so there's like, obviously variance, but I would say that was probably the biggest change was price point.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another.
Life got expensive.
Yeah, and
It does do that.
and
Does
it's
do
like
that.
also we had realized and are realizing, especially after the opening week, that it's like if you're too low, then people like don't believe you. So like I had a
Yeah.
number of people that checked in. We didn't have any reviews yet, and they're like, I thought this was too good to be true. And I remember listening to like How I Built This awesome like podcast, and I think Warby Parker or someone like had the same experience where their like glasses were like so reasonably priced that no one was buying them. So it's like they increased it to $100, and then suddenly everybody was buying it because that conveys quality. So I think it was like multifaceted. Like we spent more to make the place nice, and then we also wanted that to be like, we want that to be like the perception too, that like we're a nice place to stay. So
Well, I applaud you on it. It's a really cool concept. I've seen it online. I want to go see it. In
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah,
When they
yeah,
come
please
up.
do.
It's between Airbnb and hostels and hotels, it's finding a really cool niche. And I appreciate what you guys have done, and appreciate you coming in and talking to us. And
Thank you.
Shelley, anything else?
Yes, thank you, Blake and Brandon Shirk, for being here, for the hospitality. Thank you, Spencer Clements from William Call Company. And I neglected to recognize Justin Schultz before he left the room, but he's also with William Call. And then David Seegers, who's with William Call. We wouldn't have this building if it weren't for William Call in the city of Bryan. Also Kate Chapman in the back, who handles all the social for William Call and a number of other enterprises. But thank you all for being here, and thank you, Dean Jorge Venegas from the College of Architecture, and also Rodney Hill, Professor Hill, They are co-founders of Startup Aggieland, which was mentioned earlier, so thank you for recognizing that and recognizing Bob, and appreciate that. But thank you all for being here, and let's get another big round.
Thanks. That was awesome. Yeah, no, thank you.
Get my card.
Yeah, no, yeah.